are we are today joined by Jenny Scrivens, so we're gonna just jump right into the show instead of our normal entertaining, albeit entertaining, pre-show banter where we usually discuss progressive rock or bad movie sequels. Today we're gonna jump right into the show. So today is the 12th of August, correct? Did I get that right? Okay, cool.
Yep, Wednesday.
Wednesday. I know it's Wednesday. I think. Hello, Hockey World. It's Wednesday, August 12th, 2015.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com, and I'm doing that again. Sorry, 1 second. Timeout, freeze. So professional. Hold on 1 second. Hold on.
Yeah.
Apologize.
This is a rite of passage, Jenny.
Thanks, Jenny. I really appreciate the, how professional we are. We are one of the most listened to podcasts on the planet, even though we really,
Don't worry,
really suck at this. Anyway, and that's Kevin Allen, who just jumped in as well. Hey, Kevin.
Hey.
And we are joined today by Jenny Scrivens, newly signed goalie for the New York Riveters of the NWHL. And this is such an exciting thing. This is the original four. You know, they had the original six in the NHL. You guys are the original four. And that's got to be thrilling. So what's it like? I mean, what's it like, Jenny, to actually to sign a professional hockey contract and know that you're now a professional hockey goalie?
I'll be honest, I think it's all still sinking in. I kind of woke up this morning and, jumped out of bed and thought, oh my gosh, yes, I'm a professional hockey player. But it's so exciting, and I'm just so happy and honored to be a part of it. I mean, especially in its infancy with just the 4 teams here. But I'm so excited to help grow the league and grow the sport and get more young girls interested in playing and more people interested in watching. I think that the sport deserves that at this point.
I think that's amazing, and I think there's so many interesting things about you and about the league, and we're going to just try to touch on a few. Russ and I are going to really cover this hard this year. We talked about it. It's very important to both of us for a lot of reasons, and I can't wait to come and see you guys play, actually. So, but to start with, I really wanted to just ask, I'm a father of a 13-year-old girl, and I texted you this, and she's a soccer goalie who just transferred into hockey goalie, because we put a rink in our backyard this winter for the first time, and it was a blast, and and it's like a dream of mine to do this. We built it, we put it out there, and now she is just all about this. And when I told her that there was a professional women's hockey league, because there's no longer a professional women's soccer league, unfortunately, she just thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And the Sochi Olympics, she didn't miss a single game of any event that was played in women's hockey. She is all fired up and wants to go to Cornell. Your alma mater too. So you couldn't be the more. I've interviewed really important people, but you are probably going to get me the most points ever from her. I mean, there really is a women. There really are. There really is a great. I mean, I'm a coach of the women's of the girls soccer team, and I know how passionate women are and girls are about sports.
You're right, and I'm really happy to hopefully be able to set a good example for your daughter and for other young girls like her. But I mean, it's so similar. I remember when I was, I must have been in grade 2 or grade 3, and it was the first year that women's hockey was in the Olympics. So it was 1998.
Okay.
And my mom let my sister and me stay home from school and watch it. It wasn't live because it was pre-taped and then replayed throughout the day in California where we were. But I got to stay home from school and watch history as the U.S. women's team won Olympic gold. And when I was home watching that game, I was thinking, this is what I want to do. I want to try and reach this level. And there was no professional women's hockey league for us to strive to. Eventually, I figured out that college was my goal, and then I thought I could play Division I hockey. And then it turned out that I could, by studying really hard in school, I could maybe play at an Ivy League school. So I think that the sport has grown and evolved a lot, and to be able to give young girls and women the opportunity to play professional or to have that as their goal is huge.
It does make such a big difference. I mean, and the Olympics, what people don't realize, being around a 13-year-old girls hardcore travel soccer team, what the Olympics means to these girls, and just what that, and having just watched the World Cup, the Women's World Cup here, we're having parties at the house. It is so amazing to me that we're getting women's professional sports. I mean, I was always, as a goalie, always thought the first professional NHL the first sport to have an NHL player as a woman would be a goalie in the NHL. I was always convinced of that, that could be the case. And yeah, it's so great that there's a league.
Hey, Jenny, it's Russ.
She didn't play a regular season game, but she played a preseason game with Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
And, I idolized her. I grew up, wanting to be Manon Rayon. So I'm just really fortunate that with the new league, with the NWHL, we're going to be able to set a lot of examples for young women growing up in the sport.
Awesome.
Hey, Jenny, it's Russ. You had a really great career at Cornell, and now you're going to get to play for the New York Riveters, which may be one of the best names in hockey. You get
that's a great name.
You get to stay in New York State. That's got to be kind of cool and at least familiar for you.
Sorry, can you repeat? I didn't understand the question.
I'm sorry.
You're now getting to at least stay in New York State. That's got to be kind of familiar territory for you.
It is, actually, yeah. I spent 4 years in Ithaca, so we'll be in Brooklyn. Brooklyn's not too far, but I'm pretty lucky. I have some friends and family in the area. My twin sister lives in New York City, so I'll be able to see her a lot more, which, with moving around with Ben's career, I haven't been able to see everyone as much. So there are a lot of positives to moving for my career and relocating to New York. So I'm really looking forward to that. And New York's a fun place to be. I mean, it's great for hockey. There's lots to do, and hopefully there's a lot of fans that will be interested in coming to watch the game.
So my wife's watching the podcast, and she has to mention Dunbar's. I guess you hung out there a little bit?
Yes, Dunbar's is a local watering hole for all of the, mostly men's hockey it's most known for, but women's hockey too, although more men's because they tend to be a little bit older when they come to university, so they get a head start on us.
Well, I went there with for her reunion and got to see, there's pictures in Dunbar's, which is a Cornell place in Ithaca, where, you have Joe Newendike there, brought the Stanley Cup back there, and it was really cool. It's just, it is an amazing, and Jody always said that the fact of the matter was the hockey tickets were the hottest thing on campus, and I'm sure that had to be the case, right?
Oh yeah, they were the hot ticket item. I think every other sport that you could go to at Cornell was free with a student pass or something, but hockey was the only one that they had to do some sort of lottery system for, because everyone wanted to go to the games, and Minor Rink can only hold so many people legally.
Right. Oh yeah, and I know they pack it out. I've never been to one, but I really want to get to one up there. And my other question is this: I mean, what advice do you give to girls coming up now who are looking at soccer and hockey and such? I think that's there are a lot of girls. There's a really booming American girls soccer program, obviously, and the hockey program is just getting going. And in some places, you have to play with the men or you have to play with the boys. What's your advice to a young hockey girl playing now?
I think it's most important to make sure you're still having fun. I mean, when you're young, it shouldn't be too competitive. It shouldn't be too stressful, and it shouldn't be the only thing you're focusing on. So when I was growing up, I started playing hockey when I was about 6, but didn't play on a competitive travel team until I was about 10 or 11. And I was still playing competitive soccer because I grew up in Southern California, and that's kind of what almost every little girl did. So I started out with ASO, and then I played on a club travel team that went all over Southern California. So got to a point where my sister and I were 10, 11 years old, and we were driving 2 hours to hockey practice, staying the night somewhere in Orange County, and then driving another hour to a soccer game, driving another hour back to a hockey game, and then home. And it got to be a lot. And we were very focused on school, too, which was very important for my sister and me, and also helped us get into an Ivy League school. So I think it's important to make sure you're always having fun. You don't have to specialize in any one sport too soon. I think that causes a lot of burnout. So rotate the sports, have fun, play soccer, lacrosse, or hockey, or tennis, whatever works for you, and just make sure you're having fun.
I think that's great advice, and I know a lot of the travel teams in soccer especially are now making girls at the age of 13 pick sports. Like, you're not allowed to play lacrosse, and I think that's ridiculous. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. It
is, and I know some coaches, they don't want you to get injured. Both my coaches would be worried when I go to the other sport and play, and they didn't want me to come back injured or with a sprained ankle or something like that. But I mean, you just have to have fun. I've seen a lot of players just get burnt out, and that's going to happen when all you do is play one sport and you don't have any sort of balance. I mean, even maintaining a social life and relationships with your family is important.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Kevin, you have a question?
Yeah, Jenny, this is Kevin Allen of USA Today Sports, and I'm probably one of the few sports writers who went all the way back. I covered one of the first World Championships in Kitchener, Ontario years ago, and I've been to all the women's tournaments at the Olympics. And you mentioned Manuel Rioma. I just wondered if you were growing up, were aware, or idolized or paid attention to some of the great American goalies like Aaron Witten, who played pro hockey, and Kelly Dyer, and so forth. Were they on your radar?
Sorry, is the question if I paid attention to male pro goalies?
Like Kelly Dyer and the other goalies on your radar at the time.
Aaron Witten, was she on your radar?
California, and I really looked up to, when I was little, Kelly Rudy, played for LA, and then when I was in high school, I think that was when G. Gear was playing in Anaheim. So I had a lot of great role models there to look up to, and then after that I went on to university and really started to pay a lot more attention to the NHL, but also a lot of the female players. So
yeah, that's what Kevin was. Kevin was wondering some of the early women goalies for Team USA. Did you follow them?
I did. I'm trying to think of who played in the Nagano. What was it?
Aaron,
I'm pretty sure, something like that.
Yeah. So Nagano was who, Kevin?
Well, and Nagano was. I'm drawing a blank, but their early pioneers were Aaron Witten and Kelly Dyer, who I didn't play in the Olympics, but they were pre-Olympic goalies. They were the big women's American goalies, and they both played minor league pro hockey in the men's leagues. So, anyway, the other question I had for Jenny is, just because I'm curious to this, do you think it'll be more important with this new league for all the teams to be competitive right away, or to have a like a superstar that fans can sort of get excited about?
So the question if it would be better for the league to have.
Yeah, Kevin was
sorry,
basically. No, that's okay. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. No, we have a really rudimentary way of doing this here. It's my fault. The question is, Kevin wants to know if early in the leagues getting going, is it more important in your opinion for the teams to be competitive, or them to sort of have a superstar or some real faces of the league?
I think we need to make the league competitive. I think we need to make the games exciting and interesting for fans to really get involved in. I'm sure superstars will emerge. There's no doubt about that. But I think the more competitive we can make the league, the more fans will attract, whether they were NHL fans and now they're opening their eyes to another sport, so to say. But yeah, I'm definitely here to make it as competitive as possible. And we'll see how long that goes.
That's awesome. I'm sure that, like anything else, women's hockey at the high level that you're at is a really small world, right? And I'm sure a lot of the girls on all four of these teams are girls you've played with or are close with, correct?
Yeah, I played with or against quite a few of them, and if not, then I recognize their names. It's definitely a small world. And I was looking at the rosters. A lot of them played in CCACs, so if I didn't play against them, then they came up, a year or two after I graduated, and, I would still read about them in the papers or read about them online. So I'm really looking forward to meeting a lot more players. And then I think there's already 2 who have signed from Cornell, and I didn't get the chance to play with them, but I've either met them or been in touch with them. So it's kind of nice to have that sort of Cornell support.
Well, that's awesome. And we're going to be following you throughout the year. We'd like to have you back at some point and see how things are going, throughout the whole season. And
yeah,
that would be great. That would really be great. And if you're interested in more information, it's the nwhl.co. So .co is the website for the NWHL, and it's an amazing thing. And so the first teams are in Boston, Buffalo, Connecticut, and New York. And if you're in any of those areas, make sure you get there. Make sure you get out a chance. Actually, to actually check this out. We're gonna get to some games, and we're gonna do everything we can. And I'm gonna, I've already talked to a couple people who want to blog for this league, and I think that's really important too. And I want to be covering the trade deadline. I know, isn't that cool? I want to cover the trade deadline rumors. That's my deal. I'm gonna cover the trade deadline rumors for your league. Can't wait. We'll have our own trade deadline show here. That would be great. So thanks, Jenny. Have a great day again for joining us. And from now on, by the way, we're only referring to your husband Ben as Has husband a professional hockey goalie, Jenny. So that's me. We got to do that. That's going to be how we're going to handle it from now on.
Thank you. That's so kind of you.
We appreciate it. All right, take care. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Talk to you soon.
Later.
Bye.
Bye.
That was Jenny Scrivens, guys. Fun time. Sorry about the technical stuff there. We were trying to get her on Google Hangouts, but maybe next time we'll be able to. But yeah, that was so cool, isn't it? I mean, I just think this is such a cool thing. I'm amazed that this is happening. I'm excited because, like I said, I see the passion of so many of these young girls who play sports, and having having places that they can reach for like this, it just does so much for them. I mean, the Olympic program, like I said, what it means for women's soccer at all levels is unbelievable. And that U.S. national team is incredible, and they have done so much, and it just good begets good. It just gets better and better and better. More girls get into it. And yeah, Russ, you and I have to really take this seriously and cover this in a big way this year to make sure that we get the word out.
No doubt.
Yeah, much work is going to need to be done. Like I'm bullish on women's hockey, and I go way back, and having covered it the best I could in connection. But this will be very difficult. I mean, you look at the WNBA and look at the popularity of women's basketball and basketball in general, and look at the struggle they've had. Now they've been around a long time, but nobody has gotten rich out of women's basketball. So it's taken a long time. So my only point is I think it's somewhere along the line here, either the NHL or USA Hockey in conjunction with maybe Hockey Canada. There's going to have to be probably some subsidy along the way here if they want this to continue, because it's going to be hard. It's going to grow the game. And the reason I asked the question I did is I actually had a discussion about this in Lake Placid. I actually believe I disagree a little bit with Jenny just on the fact that I think it's more important to have a star.
Right.
I think, I'll just use my interest in golf, for example. I was not a big golf fan, but when Tiger Woods came along, and he was great, and he was so much better than everyone else. Same thing with tennis. The Williams sisters.
Right.
when they're so much better, you want to kind of say, well, why is that? And you want to watch that, and you want to enjoy the dominance. So they need someone like Hillary Knight or someone of that ilk to be a Gretzky, to be a dominant player, so that it will intrigue a non-traditional women's fan to say, hey, why is that player so much better than everyone else? So I like the fact that the original four that you brought up, that's a great, and the Riveters is a great name. Yeah. But it's going to take some work, and I think everyone has to be patient. And you can't microwave this. And for people, if you're going to judge it by the first season and be critical if they don't pack every house, it's not going to work. It's going to take time.
Yeah. The interesting thing is I was on their initial conference call, and so there's the CWHL, and that's where Hillary Knight is, and some of the other players are still under contract in that league, but in that league, the girls don't get a salary, they don't get sticks paid for, and they're getting those things in this league. So that's what's really sort of setting it apart, and you could sort of see that down the road, and even the commissioner talked about it, that there's a potential for these two leagues to merge, and if they do, then you would get your wish, Kevin, and then Hillary Knight would be in that league. And so it could happen in a year or two based on if the model works. But the fact that they are getting paid and they don't have to pay for their own sticks is a great start. Now, goalies still have to pay for their own equipment, and I'm going to be writing about that in the next day. But it's getting there, though.
I'm not even sure Hillary Knight is the right person. I mean she's a great player. I just used her as an example of they're going to need a great player, and maybe she's not coming now. Maybe she doesn't. She's still 15 years old. My point is that at some point they're going to need somebody that will sort of capture the imagination.
Yeah.
I think if you expand into Canada, you're going to have to get the Haley Wickenheisers or some of the players from the 2014 Canadian team to make this. I mean, if you can sort of generate the U.S.-Canadian rivalry in this NWHL, if you have a merger of the two leagues and you have that rivalry pervading through the league, I think that could be a recipe for success.
Yeah, I totally agree. I completely agree with that.
The key, in my opinion, is patience and finding getting a commitment from the hockey powers, the NHL, to give some level of subsidy to this. So, and you got to be able to provide a wage that the women can live on. I mean, that's been the success of the WNBA. What's helped the WNBA too is that there are professional leagues for women in Europe where you in the off season you go play over there and you make even more money than doing the WNBA. So the WNBA just gives you something to do when you're in the U.S. In fact, did I read somewhere that Diana Taurasi was a really good player? I think her Russian team, if I'm not mistaken, or her European team anyway, I think they paid her not to play in the WNBA.
Wow.
Just they wanted her fresh.
Wow.
For their season. I hope I'm right on that, but I think that's what I ended up reading. So.
That's fascinating. No,
again, I don't want to come across as negative because I'm not.
This is hard though. This is hard. This is not easy.
It is going to be hard, and it just drives me crazy when people, because we're living in a social media world, people want to, they'll be 2 weeks in and people will be rendering an opinion on whether or not this is.
Those people are idiots. I mean.
But they will. And
they will, no question. But those are twidiots. Twidiots.
It's going to take time, and I mean years, because the WNBA has been around a long time, and it's going to take years to establish this. And we're going to need to, there's, maybe it's the 10-year-olds right now in women's hockey that will be the key, But
the key, one of the big keys I think they're doing, which is really smart, by putting the teams where they're putting them in markets where there are youth women hockey programs going pretty strong. And that's huge. These are markets where you do, like around here, there's one place that has a women's, a girls hockey league team going. A lot of the girls have to play with the boys, but in the areas where they're going, like in New York and Buffalo and Connecticut, and Boston, there are pretty thriving girls hockey leagues, and where they're going to be smart to be served is sort of what we're seeing the Major League Soccer do in the U.S. Which Major League Soccer is really banded closely with the youth soccer. Like our soccer club gets a group of tickets, here and there from the Philadelphia Union all the time, and when you go to the Philadelphia Union Stadium and you walk in the concourse, all the clubs that the Union's associated with have a jersey that's hanging in the concourse. Our jersey hangs in the concourse there. That kind of connection is huge for for soccer to make, with us, and that's boys and girls. I think that's the kind of thing they have to do with some of the girls' youth leagues. Get them out, get them tickets, make special buys, and have those girls come out and play with them, and a lot of these girls are the girls who are running camps already, for the girls hockey.
Yeah, I mean, the big difference in women's hockey, and Russ could speak to this too, is that the first generation of stars, like, and I'll use Karen Bai as an example. Karen Bai is in both the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame and the International Ice Hockey Hall of Fame, meaning so she's in there with great players like Tretiak and Harlamov. Well, she grew up. She often had to register as KL Bai to play in the men's league, and now, as you mentioned, there are women. There are women who come up now and play international hockey who have played only against women. Where in the olden days they had to find, and some still have to play against boys, but that's the big difference. We've now at least expanded to the point where there are quality women's leagues for teams to compete against, and I think that's kind of important. And I've seen the dramatic. This is not an exaggeration. When I covered, and I've lost track of the year, but it was the early '90s. At that World Championship, there were women whose level of skating, would not, I don't know what to call it. It was inferior. It was inferior. They would pivot, and some of them would fall down. Now, not on the Canada and U.S., but like China was in that tournament. Yeah. And you would see that. Now, now you watch a women's game, and you have, because you've been to the Olympics. The level of skating and the ability to handle the puck at high speed, it's really impressive.
Like I said a few shows ago, women are shooting around 50, 60 miles an hour now, which is pretty impressive. And I was at the Lester Patrick ceremony for Cami Granato, and so I got to interview her, and she certainly was a pioneer, a college hockey player, maybe one of the best, if not the best ever. And so you could see. And then that was such a long time ago. She never really got a chance at playing in the league like this. Had she, would have been that star that you'd be looking for, Kevin. So somebody.
Yeah, that's right. She would have fit because she had a flair about her. In addition to, I just, in the Roenick book that I just finished, the second one, he listed people who he most identified with, and and they weren't all hockey athletes, but Bodie Miller, for example, a skier, who was sort of a kind of a maverick, and Brian Urlacher, the linebacker. And one of the people he mentioned was Cami Granato, that he identified with her. When he watched her, he saw some of himself in her, the way she played. She had a little bit of flair to it and a little bit of feistiness, and had this way of darting in and out of play. So I agree with Rush. Cami Granato would be a perfect. If they had a Cami Granato right now, it would help.
Yeah, and that definitely does help. And there are some players. I mean, they have signed some players. There are definitely going to be, relatives to NHL players, which helps too. Like Cami Granato helps too. And then that Jenny Scrivens is married to Ben Scrivens is something
that's going to be huge.
That helps, and it's a big thing. I hate to focus on it because I know she's every article that I was reading about her is like, oh, I'm most famously known as the wife of Ben Scrivens. Well, that is the case right now, but that's why I said what I said. I'm definitely going to do that with Ben Scrivens this year.
Well, that was my point. If this league could get, and I don't know if she has been signed, but if they could get Amanda Kessel, who arguably was the best player on the U.S. team in Sochi, then that would be a feather in the cap, and that would be a sign that this league is trying to attract and developing star players. I mean, I think that and who knows, that might happen fairly soon.
Yes, he actually has post-concussion, so she just
I believe she just retired because of.
Oh, okay. I honestly did not know that.
Yeah, no, but she was a great player. But all of that is true, and you can't apologize for that. Like, you got to promote the game.
Right.
Circus is no good if you can't get people into.
Right, no question about it. No, that's definitely true.
Watch. So you got to do that, and you got to use name recognition, and you got to point out that Jenny Scrivens is and that doesn't make her less of a goalie. You're just
of course not. No.
Yeah, you're just promoting the game.
Kind of fascinating. They both graduated from Cornell in 2010, and they were the goalie of the women's and the men's team at that time. So that's pretty cool, in and of itself.
I looked for it. I couldn't find another professional husband and wife goalie tandem. I don't think one exists.
How about professional husband and wife sports tandem? I mean, in terms of, just that's even hard to think of. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
Cami Granato and Ray Ferraro.
Right.
Yeah.
With that's the easy one.
Yeah, but professional. Yeah, but that's
no Mark Garciaparra and Mia Hamm.
Right.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of figure skating, and Bart Connor married.
Nadia Comaneci.
Yeah, Nadia Comaneci. Yeah,
and Steffi Graf and Andre Agassi.
Yeah, for sure. And Strawberry was married to a basketball player. Wasn't Daryl Strawberry?
Right. He was, but I can't remember who she is. You're right.
Yeah, so it is going to be fun, and I think so far, looking at what they're doing, they seem like they're pretty media savvy. They seem like they're pretty social network savvy, which is really where I think they've got a shot, because I think Twitter. There are definitely this is where Twitter it can be evil, but it can also be their best friend. Like this is where there's definitely some people. If people like us, we get on Twitter and have hockey followers and talk about this league in positive light, I think we can actually affect some change and make this and help this, because there's definitely a degree of that. I think that this team that they need to do.
Well, this summer's been really good for them.
Yeah.
I've done 3 or 4 articles, and I've got at least one more to do, and maybe a few more. So to me, that's good. What were you going to say, Mike?
Well, I was going to say, I can tell you that other than the Olympics, women's hockey has not been on my radar.
Right.
But with the team in Buffalo, I'm curious. I want to go to a couple games. I want to see what the league is like. I want to cover it, and I want to, give myself with my take of what this league is going to be or what it is.
And that's fun. One of the great spokesmen, I think, although she may not have time to promote it, is Angela Ruggiero, who, she's on the U.S. Olympic Committee, and when she was selected to the Hockey Hall of Fame, and when they had the conference call, she had to take it from Malaysia because she's was over there for a meeting, and she's a very accomplished person professionally, and would be a great spokesman for the the league. So
yeah, no, it's going to be fun. One of the interesting things we talked about before is that they have, if you buy a jersey of a player in this league, the player actually gets some proceeds from that jersey sale, which I think is cool. It's something that you don't get in the NHL even. So, and you always thought you should. It doesn't make sense that you don't. So, yeah, this is good. This is good. There's a lot of buzz, getting going here, and we'll keep it going as we go along. So, that was fun. I want to move on to what we discussed about yesterday, a little bit about our show, which we started off yesterday trying to talk about, but we didn't. We got into a really cool 3-on-3 discussion. But today I want to talk about it. The teams that need to avenge last year. The teams I want to get into the teams that need to actually go out there and prove something. And I tried yesterday my best to come up with the top 5 and top 10, and I really had a hard time because more than ever before in my mind, there are teams that just have a lot to prove this year. There's a lot of teams. It's hard. You can only find a few teams that really don't. And even the Blackhawks right now, they have something to prove right now because this is a team that they've lost Sharp, they've lost Duya. There's stuff going on with each of these teams. So Mike, I can start with you and you give me some of your teams, and as far as if we try to put together our list today of maybe the top 5 teams with the most to prove, with the most to avenge.
I'll give you a couple off the bat, and both of these teams barely missed the playoffs and had significant roster changes. One is Boston, who fell out the last weekend of the regular season. They don't have Hamilton, they don't have Lucic. They made significant changes to the roster.
They have Ronaldo.
I'm sorry?
They have Ronaldo. They have Zach Ronaldo. Remember that?
Well, yeah, there you go. Yeah, then everything's fine. I still think that there is a core group there that is quality, but there are a lot of question marks with Don Sweeney coming in as the general manager, with Chiarelli leaving. I mean, they still have Rask, they still have Bergeron and Krejci up the middle, but I don't get the feeling that this is going to be the big bad Bruins team that we've seen the last few years. Chara's getting older, Seidenberg's getting older, so there is some new blood coming in, but it's a question of whether they can stay at that level and get back into the playoffs with the way the Eastern Conference is. In the West, it's the LA Kings. I mean, obviously Stoll and Richards and Voyanov, those situations. I think everybody thought they were going to make the playoffs last year. They didn't. There's going to be a significant change over there, and it's a question of whether that core group with Kopitar and Doughty and Quick can get back in the playoffs. And I think hanging over that organization right now, it hasn't been resolved yet. Kopitar is an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year, and they have to get him signed to a long-term extension. Otherwise, if you're approaching the deadline and you still don't have him locked up, do they move him up to get something before he walks away for nothing? I think that team has a lot of pressure on it this year.
Yeah, those are two good choices. I mean, when I think about Boston, I really do think that this is a question, I guess, to the other to Russ and Kevin are, I mean, maybe I'll start with you, Russ. Is it okay for the Boston Bruins to not think of themselves as a playoff team? Like that's
No, because they have one of the higher ticket prices in the league, and fans tell me that every day. So I think that's the problem that they're up against. And so the fan base is not going to want to hear that, hey, we may not contend this year. Yeah. They're not. Now that still might happen, but they don't want to hear it.
No, that's not their situation. And Kevin, I mean, are the LA Kings? Are they still magical? Like, that team is a magical team.
No, Mike's choice is a good one. I looked at it a little differently. I was thinking more in terms of teams, going to the next level. But I like both his Kings and Bruins a lot on that. I'm not. I think one of the most overwritten things regarding teams is whether or not their free agents will sign. Like, I don't think there's any chance that Kopitar is going to play out his option. Right. So I don't think that's a concern. But I wonder where this team really is at. The Kings, Sutter is a coach who got a lot out of that team. I think the players had a lot of respect for him because they knew that he knew how to take them to the next level. But I think, like any other coach, I think they've gone a little weary of his voice a little bit. And now, before I'd say, oh well, they'll squeak in, they'll find a way, and then they got a chance. I don't view them now as a team like that. I think they are a team that has a lot to prove. I thought the Lucic move was an interesting one though, because boy, it seemed like he was born to be a big bad Bruin, but the way they play in LA, wasn't he born to play with that group?
Yeah. Oh yeah, and with Kopitar, that's going to be scary. I mean,
yeah. So that they're going to be interesting. The way I viewed it though, I think the Chicago Blackhawks are the team that I think have the most to prove, because I think people are looking to them to see if you really can just change a team on the fly. They've already done that already. They've done it already. Now, can they do it again? Because they've made significant changes. They've eroded their depth, and now they're going to try to do it again. And I think it's possible. I do.
Yeah, I do too, and that's the crazy thing about it, right? And is the ice cream man in somebody's house? Sounds like the ice cream man just drove by somebody's house. But yeah, is it possible? It's a darn good question. I mean, they really did impress. They've lost more now. Like when I look at how close the Ducks were to them and how close the Predators were to them, and they were both two teams that I thought the Predators actually were the closest to beating the Hawks, even though the series, where the Ducks went 7 games, I felt like the Predators at times actually were the only team in the entire NHL in the playoffs that actually looked better than Chicago at times in those games. There were moments that the Predators looked better than the Hawks, and then there were moments when the Predators just fell apart, as well. But they actually looked strong, and yet the Ducks and the Predators, neither of them have taken the kind of steps back that the Hawks have had to take here. They both took. So the Hawks have had to lose a couple players where none that hasn't happened in Anaheim or Nashville. That's so I wonder. Yep.
Well, it really will be interesting to kind of sort through that. I think the Ducks, the loss of Boschman, I think is far more significant than other people seem to think. But they added Carl Hagelin, and I think he is not the difference-making player, but his speed. I think when you add one guy that's as fast as him, I think it alters your team speed. And the Ducks were already a pretty dynamic offensive team, but I think it makes them even more dynamic. So I think they're still in the hunt. The other team that I think I'm fascinated with as a team that they have something to show, and that's the Dallas Stars. They may be more like the Blackhawks now than the Blackhawks.
Yeah.
They have by adding Patrick Sharp to that mix, and Kushkin is coming back and is healthy, and Klingberg now is he's not Duncan Keith, but he's a premium defenseman. So I'm bullish on that team. I'm starting to fool around with my preview for my USA Today preview magazine, and I've got them ranked really high. And adding the Emmy to the mix. When I take each of those two goalies, like Lettinen and the Emmy, neither one of them do I consider an elite level goalie. But I put those two together and I say to myself, okay, Lettinen will be a little bit better because he's being pushed by Niemi. And Niemi has been around the block, knows what he's done, has won a Stanley Cup. Why can't this team be, if you start rating their offense, their defense, their goaltending, their coaching, their front office, and you rate them on a 1 to 10, their special teams, they're 7 and above now on everything.
Yeah.
Their coaching is, I'm going to give it an 8. Their front office, Jim Nill hasn't done anything yet officially, but he feels like a 9 to me.
Amazing.
Their goaltending's a 7. I wouldn't go any higher than that, but their offense is a 9. With Ben and their defense, I think it's better than people say when you look at it. There's some guys there. Goligoski. I think he's a better than average offensive-minded defenseman. They've got some guys. Their younger players are pretty good. So,
well, the two teams that you brought up, Nashville and Anaheim. I mean, one thing that you look at Anaheim right now. I believe they still have over $10 million in cap space, but they have young defensemen like Vatanen and Lindholm who are on the last years of their entry-level deals. So they're probably going to be asking for significant pay increases, so that money is going to get eaten up. But they have that core group of Perry and Getzlaf and Kessler all locked up long term, whereas the Kings have the problem of on the uncertain situation of the Richards contract and that grievance with the NHLPA, the Voyanov situation, Kopitar being a UFA at the end of next year and carving out room to be able to fit him in. And not only losing the three guys that I mentioned, but losing Justin Williams to free agency and him going to Washington. So there's a lot of question marks there with the Kings. The other team I think there's you put into that avenge category, I think, is the San Jose Sharks. They fell short last year. They really, again, have not made those big changes that everybody has wanted them to make. They're locked in with the guys like Thornton and Marlowe who have the no-move clauses. They did add Paul Martin as a free agent and made the trade for Martin Jones and have a new coach in Peter DeBoer. But essentially, this is the same team, same core group. And can Peter DeBoer get more out of this core group than their previous coaching staff did?
Yeah, good point, Russ.
But they changed the right guys there. Years ago we were talking about the one place where you can have the biggest change is when you change the goalie, because it really affects everything. So he changed the goalie, and Martin will change the defense considerably, just because he's efficient as a player. So I think they will be, and that personnel is good. I've never believed, and we've had this discussion before, but I've never believed that it was Joe Thornton's problem. This guy performs every year. He puts numbers on the board. I would probably trade Marlowe if given the opportunity, but they don't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
But, Pavelski's a terrific player. Couture's a terrific player. They've got good young players.
Yeah.
They'll be all right.
I think then Brent Burns is a great player. I mean, they really have some great players there. Russ?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the avenge part, but from the bottom feeder part of it, and say, look, the Edmonton Oilers can no longer be looked at as a team collecting first-round picks.
Yes.
They just can't. I mean, this is a team now. They brought in McClellan, right? Did they get Sekera? Is that who they? Yeah, they got Sekera.
Right.
Darnell Nurse has a chance to make the team. They have Connor McDavid. Leon Draisaitl's right there. They have these players, plus Yakupov has something to prove still, and they re-sign him. They now have to get to the next spot too, and so whether they're going to be a playoff team or not, who knows? But they've got to get close, because fans there are starting to get a little weary of coming in next to last or last every year and getting the first round pick every year. Yes, it's a nice thing to have happen, but you don't want it to happen too often, or otherwise then there's no hope. So I think the Oilers are one of them. And I'm going to go to the New Jersey Devils. They're kind of interesting because, Lamoriello's out. They brought in John Hines. They brought in Ray Shero. Shero didn't announce that it's a rebuild. They just signed Pavel Zacha to an entry-level deal. Maybe he gets a shot at making the team. He's a hell of a talent, and he really could have a shot at making it.
Kind of like a real superhero villain name, too, Pavel Zacha. I mean, I think he would be an awesome superhero villain whenever I hear that name. Continue, Cyrus.
No, it's okay. And they still have guys like Camilleri. They brought in Kyle Palmieri. John Moore can certainly help the defense. They re-signed Larson, so that certainly gives them a little bit more. They kept Kincaid as their backup. Corey Schneider was a terrific goalie last year, and he really had no support from the offensive end. So if they could somehow generate some offense, and if Stepan Matteau maybe all of a sudden makes a step this year, maybe we're not looking at the Devils right now, but maybe they can do something. So I think they have something to prove, because I think their fans are sort of on the edge now too.
Well, it's Russ. It's ironic that you mentioned Edmonton, because I was going to mention the Eastern Conference version of Edmonton, which is the Buffalo Sabres, especially after making the trade for Ryan O'Reilly, making the deal during the season for Evander Kane, adding Robin Lehner. They traded a good chunk of their, the depth of their prospects to get players who are, not old. They're all 23, 24 years old, but they're now players. And after finishing dead last 2 years in a row, fans in Buffalo, there was a 95% renewal rate for season tickets. Fans in Buffalo want to see a team that will at least be competitive. Will they make the playoffs? Probably not, but they want to see Eichel play, they want to see Reinhart play, and they want to see guys like O'Reilly and Evander Kane play to the level that they have played before. And if this team is competitive, I think fans in Buffalo will be happy. But if they're not, if they're just almost as bad, even after these tinkerings that Tim Murray did, I think there'll be a lot, a significant amount of concern from the Buffalo fan base.
I like that Buffalo team. You look at their potential top 6 forward group; it's pretty good. I mean, in addition to Evander Kane and Eichel and O'Reilly, and then you got Gergensons. You have Reinhart that'll be in the mix as well, and Tyler Ennis. That's an interesting group, and Ristolainen is a good young defenseman. I'm kind of bullish on that. Going back to Russ, I wanted to just talk a little bit about that and play the devil's advocate here. I'm actually bullish on both of those teams because I think Chiarelli and Ray Shero are both good GMs and they'll do a good job of turning them around. But I looked up this morning. The Oilers could be 32 points better this season. That's how far they have to come back. And, it's just such a struggle, to do that. And the Devils just have no hope of scoring. Like, I just can't see where it's coming from. Like, Mateau is a good prospect, but he's not a scoring prospect, unless I'm wrong on that, Russ. Well,
he's a big body, and if he gets in the crease, he could put in, 10, 15 goals. The thing is...
They need 25, 30 goals.
Yeah, I know, they need
I know, and I'm selling this on the fact that if Zacha makes this big jump, this guy has dynamic talent, and he's got size. And so that could be the player that they haven't had in a very long time. Plus there's Palmieri, plus there's Camilleri. There are some other guys who could score. Zajac can score a little bit. They might have a lot of 10, 15 goal scorers, and then they might have a guy, maybe they have a rookie that injects some excitement, and so we'll see.
Well, but, they didn't have anybody but Camilleri score 16 or more goals last season. They didn't have anybody score 45 points.
Right. Different coach now, too.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I actually did try to find out from talking to people I trust of what, even though I saw Hines at the youth level and coaching the development program, I didn't really have a sense of whether he's an offensive or defensive coach. They gave up the fewest goals, I think, in the AHL, but he also had a 49 goal differential. So it seems to me like he's more of a two-way guy, and when I've asked other people saying, I wouldn't characterize him as either an offensive or a defensive coach. So I don't know. I want that Devils team to be better, and I know that Ray Shero will make it a better offensive team. I just think it's going to take time. Yeah. And, I just don't think they can score enough goals next season to get that done. Like Patrick Elias is still one of their better forwards, and he's 39 years old.
Right.
And his best years are behind him. So.
Ray Shero may not have said rebuild, but it is rebuild. And the only benefit I see of Zacha making the team as an 18-year-old is to maybe learn from Elias in probably his last year as a pro. But, I think it's very possible that Zacha could benefit from going back to the OHL for another year, just as much as playing in the NHL as an 18-year-old, depending on how mature you think he is. But if you look at that team right now, their number one center is probably Travis Zajac, and their number two center, if they decide to play him up the middle, is Adam Henrique, who have been classic underachievers the last 2 or 3 years.
A little hard on Henrique. I mean, Henrique.
Let's not be that hard on Henrique. He had 43 points.
Yeah.
He's only 25. What if this is the year? I mean, he does have a lot of talent.
I know, but
he does, and he has no one to play with.
Right. There's no one to play with yet.
If Henrique was on another team, he would be a 50-point guy, 50 to 60 points.
Right.
I just wrote that today. I just said, he's really a 50 or 60-point guy in my opinion. He just there's just nobody to play with in New Jersey.
I'm going to go a little different direction with some of these teams. I can't look past Columbus as being a team to avenge. I mean, this is what I was really impressed with the Blue Jackets last year was, and everybody last year they were everyone's favorite darling of team to make the playoffs and to be a talent. And then they lost all those man games, of course. And then what was really impressive though is the Blue Jackets made a conscious decision with about a month left that they were going to try to win still. And even though they knew that they couldn't make the playoffs, so they knew that but as ridiculous as it is in the NHL, you can't make the playoffs if you win all those games. They were very good, and they got healthy, and they put it together, and they got a winning culture back. Now, I know they still need help on the defensive end. There's no question about it. They're still lacking there. But I'm a Bobrovsky fan, and I really do believe in him as a powerhouse. And I think that the Blue Jackets are definitely a team that those players really are going to enjoy the fact that everybody's at 0-0 and 0 again. It's when they're going to step into the season and be like, okay, that's something that they can do. And another team I'm going to throw out there is the Detroit Red Wings, honestly, because the Mike Babcock thing is such a huge question mark in terms of what is this team, and without Mike Babcock. And I know that in the Detroit area, Kevin, everyone kind of feels like this will be a smooth transition, everything's going to be fine, but these players are, if they're not playing well, if the Detroit Red Wings struggle out of the gate, that's what's going to be the story. There's going to be the story about, that Mike Babcock was their coach and he's not their coach now, and they've made the playoffs all these years, but he's not there now. So I think that the Red Wings are going to, I think they're going to come out of the gate flying. I think they're going to come out with a really big start. That's my prediction, because of the fact that they realize that there's so much to prove. This is like the perfect avenging type situation of, we're not just Mike Babcock. We are a good team. Kevin?
Yeah, we are Marshall.
Right.
I've said continuously that no coach will face more pressure than Jeff Blashill will.
Yeah.
I don't even think it's close. He's following a legend. They got this streak going. He's coached all these young kids before. Everybody's excited. His father used to be a Detroit cop. It's all set up.
Yeah, right.
And but saying all that, like, I'm really bullish on Detroit. I'm bullish because I think this team is much better than people realize. They've got a lot of good young players coming, and players, like Jacob Kindle. I brought it up on a previous podcast when I was just looking up the some of the advanced stats, and his advanced stats numbers are good. But he never played under Babcock because Babcock didn't appreciate.
Right.
And he could step in and be a 6 or a 7 defenseman, and the defense now with Rick Green playing, and the one thing about in Detroit, which I thought was a great decision. He's not playing with Cronwell. He's going to play with DeKeyser. So the shutdown pairing of Cronwell and Eriksson will remain together, and Green will play, and his job will be just to bring the puck up because DeKeyser will be the defensive man in this pairing.
Right.
So they sort of now have Green in a role that he probably should have been and wanted to be in Washington, where his sole job will be to be a power play guy and to make sure the puck gets out of his zone, which he can do very effectively. He's not going to be a top pairing guy expected to shut down Jonathan Taves or Ovechkin or whoever else he has to deal with.
Right.
I think Dylan Larkin will be a Calder finalist. I think he not only will make the team, I think he will open up a lot of eyes.
Yeah, no, that's one of my points. And they've got, I think Yurko will be better this season, and Tatar and Nyquist are, they've now done it 2 years. These guys are legitimate 25 to 30 goal scorers. So I think this is a good team. The only caveat is having Datsuk out of the lineup at the start of the season, because Zetterberg, I think, just really can't play center anymore. And he's still and I some of the fans are down on Zetterberg, but he's still a very good hockey player. He's a very smart, savvy, experienced guy. But the back injuries have worn down his wheels. He's just not as quick. So he's still an effective winger, but I don't think he can play center. So now all of a sudden you got Richards as your number one center. Well, that's not a perfect scenario. You
got the bet here, Eck. It's another bet. And in Detroit, you have one pair is the shutdown pair, and the other pair is the open up pair, because DeKeyser and Green, they'll be trying to rush the puck up into the offensive zone on every shift. Let me just say one thing on Columbus. I mean, that team has had massive injury problems. I think it's 2 of the last 3 years, and both those times it cost them a playoff spot. If they can stay healthy, and we know that that's basically random. I mean, injuries, you can't calculate injuries. But the addition of Brandon Saad gives them a legitimate scoring winger. I actually think they'll get something worthwhile out of David Clarkson in a second, third line role.
I do too. He could be, your Masterton guy, Kevin, that you're talking about.
With the pressure taken off of him after the fiasco in Toronto, him playing in a second, third line role in Columbus, I think he could score 15 to 20 goals. They added a veteran in Gregory Campbell. Again, I think the problem with this team, and Jarmo Kekalainen has not addressed it fully to this point, is the defense. I mean, right now, Jack Johnson, Ryan Murray, Feder Tootin, David Savard. I mean, it doesn't make you forget the 78 Canadians. So they really need to go out and if they can sign Ehrhoff, which there's been talk about them doing. Get a veteran guy in there, but I think they need to add 1 or 2 defensemen if they're going to contend for a playoff spot in the Eastern Conference.
Well, especially since Murray's not been able to stay on the ice in his career. If he can stay on the ice, it helps, but he's got to play almost a full season. He does.
Yeah. I don't love their defense either, but that's one of the tricks of the salary cap. Let's just use St. Louis this summer. All the rumors about Shattenkirk. Well, the reason those rumors came out is because they've spent too much on defense in St. Louis, and by that I meant it's disproportional to what everyone else is spending. So they were short in their ability to try to fix their team, and that's one of the issues. The reason why the Columbus Blue Jackets have the offense that they do is they've spent money to get their offense, and they don't have money to go out and fix their defense. So you can't have it all, is my point. There's no perfect teams out there.
No, that's for sure. And
unless you sort of get lucky, and sometimes you get guys on entry-level contracts who play at a high level, and that's.
They're not unlucky with Murray. I mean, Murray should be a great defenseman for them. I mean,
it's been injuries.
Injuries.
Yeah, I mean, think about the Blackhawks, and one of the reasons why they've been so successful is they had Brandon Saad playing at a high level on an entry-level contract, a lesser contract, and now they've moved him out when they've had to pay him again, the big-time money. So and you got to be able, in order to win a championship, you got to have a couple or 3 guys like that.
No, there's no question. The entry-level contract is really important, and it'd be amiss if I don't mention the Flyers is another team with something to do.
Before you go to the Flyers. One more name. Yeah. One more name in Columbus is Dylan Hetherington, who's a defenseman. He's 20. He got a little cup of coffee with Springfield last year. He can really move the puck, and if he is close to ready or is right there, that could help him a lot.
Yeah, I've heard good things about him too. Talking to somebody in Columbus, I agree. That's a good name, Heatherton. It's a good name for your hockey pool if you're trying to look for like a sleeper. But yeah, to mention the Flyers briefly, we talked about them yesterday, but I do think. One of the future podcasts we're going to do is sister teams, and basically the idea is I would say a team in the East, and you would give me their sister team in the West, right? And if you give me the Dallas Stars, I'm going to give you the Philadelphia Flyers and it's funny because obviously Bill Meltzer covers both for HockeyBuzz, but they are living parallel lives. I mean, Jim Nill is not, Ron Hextall is not Jim Nill, but you're talking about, every player, you go through Dallas's lineup, Sagan, Giroux, you can go through the fact that the defense is, somebody say the Flyers defense is better than, and then some will say, like you said, Kevin, the Dallas's defense is better than they give him credit for, and then you have young guys on both defenses that could be factors now, and will they be playing? And when the two teams play each other, it's just a friggin' shootout. Like there's one of the most if you want to watch an entertaining game from the past year and go on NHL Game Center and go back to watch some of the Flyers Dallas Stars games. It was 80s hockey, and it was these teams can all kinds of talent, all kinds of offense, they can play up and down. Both have goalies that might be underappreciated. Both have 2 pretty good goalies now in their spots. I think
I'm buying it. I don't think the Flyers have a Klingberg.
Well, Streit had over 50 points. I mean, again, we all forget he offensive defenseman in the league, but no one seems to give him credit for the offense he is putting up.
Yeah, but do you think? I think Klingberg has the potential to be a better all-around defenseman.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean the Flyers' answer to Klingberg might be a year or two away with Gostisbehere, maybe Provorov this year. Sanheim. I mean they have really good defensive prospects in their organization that could have an impact that Klingberg did last year with the Stars. I think the Stars right now are so heavily dependent on young defensemen. I mean I know that they did get Aduya from the Blackhawks, but the young guys like Alexiak. They're going to have to step up. Jyrki Jokipaka, the Finnish defenseman. Some of these guys are going to have to step up and play significant roles with the Stars if they're going to make the playoffs. And I think the one thing that you cannot diminish is the fact they were without Nichushkin all year last year, and everybody thought, and everybody who predicted the Dallas Stars to make the playoffs last year factored in Nichushkin to score 25 to 30 goals, and they lost him right off the bat. I think he's a big factor in them possibly making the playoffs this year.
Yeah, he's a great player, and he's an exciting, dynamic player, and very underrated, and an incredible draft pick by them. So I mean, there's so many upsides for Dallas, and Jim Nill does continue to make great moves. Obviously, I think you have to give the coaching edge if you're going to go Dallas and Philly to Dallas. I mean, Lindy Ruff is Lindy Ruff. We don't know what Hextall is yet, but Lindy Ruff is Lindy Ruff. So, I mean, there's definitely some advantages, but I see these teams in similar boats. I see their chance to make the playoffs as similar. I feel like they both could make the playoffs. They both could fall out of the playoffs. They both could be really factors. They could finish first or second in their division. Both could not make the playoffs. There really is a big swing on both of them. So and a lot of avenging to be done. So there's so many other teams we could talk about. I mean, gosh, St. Louis we didn't even mention. I mean, if there's a team. Washington and St. Louis. I mean, Washington.
All 30 teams. You could.
Yeah, some teams that just are coming off. There's more disappointments from last year than not. And I know disappointments. Only one team wins their final game, of the year. But I still think.
Let's do part 2 tomorrow, Ak.
Yeah, no, there's more. There's many more teams who There's so many difference. There's a subtle difference between disappointments and question marks. But there's plenty of teams with something to prove. I mean, the Caps are definitely setting themselves up to make a run. This is a Caps team their window is now in every which way. Blues are doing the same thing. And the Blues and the Wild, another team, have to be looking at the Hawks and saying, okay, maybe there's a little bit of a chink in the armor. Maybe we can get by the Hawks this year. So there's so much excitement, in my opinion, going on in the Western Conference and the Jets. I mean, there's just so many teams. Where are we going? One final thing I'm going to throw out there is the Edmonton Oilers. I think actually, and I hate to say this because we've said it so many years, I think actually bought themselves another year. And I don't think they have to be they have to be a playoff team yet. I don't think they have to make a run, but I think the excitement of a new coach, the excitement of Connor McDavid. I think people are going to be okay if they finish 10 points out of the playoffs, not 30, but if they're 10 points out of the playoffs.
Okay with it because they're not going to make the playoffs.
Right, but so I mean they're going to have to be, right? But I think that
most likely that's the case, but I don't know if fans will be all right with it. Like I know they're going to be excited to have McDavid, but it depends how it shakes out. If they get off to a bad start, that will hurt them, or if they just die at the end, it will hurt them. If they're pretty consistent all year, I think they'll be okay with it.
Well, if they're crushed, they can always trade McDavid to a team in the East that would be interesting.
Yeah. How about the Avalanche? Another team but they won the Central Division, then didn't make the playoffs. There's so many situations. So, yeah, this is it's hard to come up with the Penguins. It's so hard to come up with any.
Well, I will say this. I don't think there's any question the Central is the toughest division now. I mean, Winnipeg is greatly improved. Dallas, I think, is much better. I think they're a playoff team. But where are they going to go?
Yeah.
I look at that now: St. Louis, Nashville, Chicago, Minnesota, Winnipeg, Dallas, and Colorado.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think
they're all teams that expect to be in the playoffs.
The only two teams that got worse in that division are arguably Chicago because of the exit of the players that we mentioned.
Yeah.
And Colorado. I mean, I think losing O'Reilly and getting back A young defenseman in Zadorov, a guy like Grigorenko. I mean, I don't think in the short term that deal is going to help them, but in the long term, maybe giving more ice time to guys like McKinnon will help them out. But
I think Stastny. I think Paul Stastny will be back in a big way. Like I think Stastny's season from last year was a bit of a mirage. I think you're going to see the big thing. I'm sorry, he's in St. Louis. I'm not.
Yeah,
Right.
St. Louis, that's what I was
But I do think that in St. Louis that he's going to be back. I'm sorry, but I thought Stastny for a second because you mentioned Colorado, or I mentioned Colorado. I don't know what I'm saying. Let's continue
Tomorrow.
by ending the show tomorrow. We'll end the show today, but we'll talk more tomorrow. Remember, guys, without the bus, it is just friggin' hockey. Enjoy your day. Thanks again to Jenny Scrivens for coming on, and definitely check out NWHL.co, and we'll talk to you soon.